Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Bava Metzia Daf Peiches, we're going to be going on the very bottom of Pei Zayin with Beis. Rav Yanai. So Rav Yanai says that in Hatevel Mischai b'Meiser, that when it comes to the chiyuv of separating Meiser, that only takes place as Rashi continues and says that Afil Mirchai B'Kri Basada, even if it was already smoothed out in the field, as we continue to Peiches Mid Aleph, Ad Shiyir Pnei Habayis. It actually has to see your house. Remember, Biyarti HaKodesh Min Habayis. It mentions your house, says Rashi. V'lo derech gagas v'karfifois, which means not if it was brought through, let's say, your roof or some other method, as opposed to through the house. So any other way, you would not be chayiv. Rabbi Yochanan no, field chatzir kovas. Even if you bring the food into the Chatzir, into your courtyard, that also will be a chiyuv of meiser. It says that you're supposed to, even when you bring into your gates, therefore that would include your chatzir. Rabbi Yochanan understand. It says from the house, which is mashma only in the house, not from the chatzir. Some of the chatzir do the bias. It's really, even when it's in the chatzir, there's a chiyuv meiser. So what's the connection? Ma bias hamishtamer of chatzar hamishtameres. That just like your house is something in which is a protected, safe place, so too it has to be a place, a chatzar, in which there's an element of safety, of protection of these foods. Question 11. Kate miyash Rabbi Yochanan ha'apas mehadei kodesh min habayis. Diyomer fil chatzar kavas meiser. So that's the answer. The meaning of chatzar hamishtameres do mit habayis. Okay. How does he understand the pasuk b'sharech, which is mashma not just in your house, but even in gates? Also, there should be a chiyuv of meiser. He says that pasuk is telling you the me'ayole derech shar. It's referring to putting it through the normal way, to the normal gateway. You're supposed to bring it through the normal way. Excluding if you were doing any other way, which is not. Says Rashi, in other words, even if it gets to your house, but the only way it got to your house was going, let's say, through the roof and downward, so then there would also not be a chiyuv, even though it's actually in the house. So it's got to be b'sharecha, it's got to actually go through your gates, the normal way to get to your house. So Metzia Rav Chanina, he asked a question. We said before, kinafshecha, what do we learn out? That kach nafshe shel poyel, that we said so too is the way of the worker. Just like you, the owner of the field, has certain rights to these fruits, so too the poyel. So bama nafshecha yichel upater. So we said that the owner could eat these fruits and he'll be potter from chiyuv meiser. While he's working, he can eat the fruits, and there's no chiyuv of meiser, which is mashma halo can't chayiv. Maila basada. The whole reason why you're potter is dafka because you're a poil. What happens if it was actually purchased? As Rashi the mekach mashli ki gemar malacha. That should count as a gemar malacha, even if it's in a field, and therefore we see that it doesn't have to go into your property. So this is the question: purchasing is like you're making a gemar malacha to be chayiv, but it's in the field, not in the house or the gate, like we said above. So char shouldn't be necessary. So we're talking about figs that are in the garden, and its branches are going over into the courtyard. So, and who says the house. So look at Rashi. These branches are not choshev. We go after the main part of the tree, and the main part of the tree is on the outside. It's necessary for you to gather up everything and bring it to the house. Until there, Ulam Kamar Malachahu, fine. Bihochi, if that's the case, V'rek the Gemara, Baal Bayis Nami Nechayev, so then the Baal Bayis should also be Chayev. No, Baal Bayis Eina B'tein Nasai. The Baal Bayis, his eyes are on the figs. However, the buyer, his mind is on the sale. Says Rashi, V'hein peros hatilushin, and these are the detached fruits. Umishinishlushu Baal Bayis, and when they're detached, they are brought into the house. So let's look at question 12. V'yachalta navim kinafshecha. V'may hilchos asakra. So in the Havamina we thought it meant that you're potter from Meiser. And that's what we tried to see. So we see maybe you're not chayiv until Meiser. Or Maskana, we're going to end up seeing it's lifter moist chasima, which we actually didn't get to yet. Okay. Is it true that if someone would purchase these fruits, then you're going to be chayiv in Meiser? Is that true? It says Rashi, to say that the worker doesn't have a chiyuv of separating Meiser because only the buyer does, but not the poils. Therefore, you need a pasuk to tell you that the poil is potter. Why were the stores of Beis Chin, was the name of the place, why were they destroyed 3 years before Yerushalayim? Because they basically went against, says Rashi, they didn't follow the dinim of the Rabbanon. Matzu hetem in the Torah, because they found a hetem in the Torah, because maybe midaraisa there's no chiyuv, but midarabban there was, and they didn't, and because of that they were punished. Now we're going to end up seeing, therefore, that the whole din of leikech to be mechuyev in meiser is not a din deraisa. How do we see that? Because they would say, as we continue to pay chesim and beis, based on the pasuk aser taser v'yachalta, that there's a chiyuv. These psukim which are written next to each other, it says v'yachalta, and you eat it, v'loi moicher, not the seller, tavua sarech v'loi keach. So we see clearly that there's no chiyuv d'oraisa of being first aser taser and then can you eat it. That's only a normal person who owns the field. However, you would buy it or sell it, there's no chiyuv d'oraisa. Elam d'Rabbanan across smachta bi'alma. It's only din d'Rabbanan. Anyway, the point is, it's a kasha. How could you tell me, and we just said before, that oikeach is d'oraisa, that the buyer is mechuyev d'oraisa to separate ma'aser, which is the reason why we need a pasuk to tell you that a poil is potter. It's not true. Even oikeach is not chayiv. And therefore, you don't need this pasuk to tell you anything about a poil not being mechuyev in ma'aser. Ela kenafshachal maskalas ma'yasa, as we saw already in question 12. We're going to say kenafshacha ma nafshacha im chasamta potter poil im chasamta potter. So, just like muzzling an animal, says Rashi, im chasat ikatzatz, if let's say you muzzled katzatz the damim shul echel oy b'chazaka, you say, listen, I'm going to pay you extra money, don't eat any of the food, so then you're be potter of v'lavli sachsom. So this is an interesting din. This is what question 12 says, that your pot from loisachsima, the lava of loisachsam, is if you would have stipulated originally and have paid them extra for this. So Meisiv Marzutra, Ezuhu Garnai Lamaisrus. What is considered to be like a pile to therefore be mechuyev in the dinim of meiser? Says Rashi, Shiyakori Garin of Gemar Malacha, it's completed. Last behen achilas arai. They can't even eat a small amount until tithes were separate. B'kishuim b'deluyim. When it comes to cucumbers and gourds, mishi yipaksu. So says Rashi, mishi nito pikas shohen, v'hu perach hagadol b'reish. Barosha, you take like the top flower that's growing on it. And Rashi says, "L'achar zman hu naifel b'tolosh," it ends up falling. Yomi Rabbi Asim, mishi yinatel pikas shohen, when the blossom part falls off. So Maila Mishi Pasku Afil Basada. Even it's in the field. So now we're going back to the original question that we said the chiyuv of meiser is only in the house, or even maybe the mark in the gate in your shar b'sharecha. But we see that maybe even the field is a chiyuv. Whoa, mishi paksu bebayis. It means that the blossom part came off in the house, because it's only in the house is there chiyuv. Yihachi, if that's the case, mishi paksu. Ad shi paksu miboile. Says Rashi, that even the house is not going to be meiser until the blossom come off. So a boil misne. It should say that. So itan ad shi paksu. If it said it that way, havamina ad digamar lepikusaihu. You would think all the blossoms need to fall off. Kamash malan mishi paksu. Mechi aschule pikusaihu. Only when the first ones begin to fall off, not that all of them have to. Okay. Meisiv Mar Zutra. He asked a question. Bereder Nachman, Garnula Maisu Chayvulav. When it comes to the Gairin, the silo for Chiv of Meiser, Mishum Tevel Mishi Gamar Malachton. It's only from the time when it's already Gamar Malacha. It has to be that it's completed, and then all of a sudden there's a potential Chiv of being separating Meiser. The gathering it together. So my love, hachnasasan afil basada. Again, maybe even in the field, not necessarily it doesn't have to be in the house. Lo hachnasasan labayas. Zehu gomer malachtan. Only that is considered to be gomer malachtan. The boys say alternatively, kikam Rav Yanai b'zeisav anavim. When did Rav Yanai say? Who's Rav Yanai? First words we said in this daf. The ein hatevel mischayv b'meiser. That's your penei bias. That the only time you're chayiv is only when it goes into the house. Maybe it's not talking about all foods. Maybe Rabbi Yana is only talking about bezeisav anavim by olives and grapes, the labnei garinahu, because they're not made into a pile. Because when it comes to these other things, the pasuk explicitly says once it's in a pile, which is mashma, it should not make any difference whether it's in your house or not in the house, and therefore maybe we're going to make a distinction that the only time there's a chiv is if it's in your house, is dafka when it comes to things that don't make a pile. Things that make a pile, then you be chayiv even in the field. And on this, Rashi says, in the din of Rabbi Yishid, Yamar Adam Marim al Tuwaso, is a way you can kind of do this trick of not being chayiv to Meiser, Leisle Haitirutz. He can't answer that. If he'll bechiti Masari Nami Amra Rav Yanai. Okay. Ashachan, fine. So now we find that Adam Mechuber, that there's this element of a person who's working with the grains that are attached, the shor betolush, as well as an ox dealing with food while it's already detached. The din of Osaks and Sharbadisho refers to an animal. It should not be muzzled while it's detached. So Adam betolush menon. How do we know that also a person, when the food is detached, is also he's able to eat? When it comes to an ox, cannot eat if it's attached. But he can eat it while it's tolush. So Adam shaychel b'mechuber and then shaychel b'tolush. Diablo shor shechein atzamatzav al chisimasai. There's an isser of muzzling. There's no din of muzzling your animal, of muzzling the person. Especially, as we said, if you can pay him more and it's designated and set aside, then there's no such din. Maybe there could be a commandment that you're not allowed to, so to speak, muzzle your workers from eating. Mishor. Because when it comes to an ox, there's no chiv to have it to live. The pasuk of b'cheya is not talking about animals; it's for people. Nonetheless, you're not allowed to muzzle it. So there's a din b'cheya by a person. So Amakra. Kenafshecha shel poil manasho im chasamtoi potter of poil im chasamtoi potter. As we said, we have another pasuk which says that if you would, so to speak, muzzle your worker, you would be potter. As again Rashi said, im chasamta katzatzta domim shelo echol then pater, you're pater from the level of saksam. So how do we know a person is allowed to eat the food while it's detached? So kama based palm. This is a choice. If we don't need it for a person while it's attached, while it's detached. Actually, you don't even need a pasuk. Certainly could eat it. When a person goes into the vineyard of his friend, are we not referring to a case that is carrying fruits on his shoulders? In other words, they are detached. And the pasuk says you could eat it. So it seems like that is what we're talking about over here anyway. So it must be that we're talking about detached items. How do we know an ox is? Well, how do we know the din when it comes to an ox when the food is attached? Because we only went was tosh. So So a person who cannot eat it while it's detached, you can eat it while it's attached. So you can't learn out one from the other, because again, we're more strict when it comes to a person because there's a din of the chayachichimach. And then we say, okay, maybe we should cause these animals to live based on kavachar. There's no isser of muzzling a person. You still have to take care of them. You have to let them live. So sure, so according to kavachar, you should be able to see that you do have to provide life for an animal. So there's an exercise that even if a kavachar, it's excluding an ox. So how do we know regarding a shore while the food's attached? So we don't need it for a person, so they're going to talk about an ox while it's mechober. So therefore we see that the din is mechober and tolish. The truth is, we don't need a pasuk for a poil who is eating something which is detached, or an ox eating something which is attached. Why? Just Pashut says you're not allowed to muzzle your animal, as we continue to pay testament off. Michli, let's understand this. It's including everything. Says Rashi, we must be forced to say, Shor lav davka, the whole shar behemois is to bataras chasima. As we've learned elsewhere, it's not only an ox, it's referring to all other animals. Because the Gabi Shabbos Ksiv, the whole behemtara, the chiv han the shor lav davka, we're not talking about specifically about an ox. Why does he even have to mention the word shor at all? Just say, don't muzzle. After all, why does he mention ox? Lakushi, to make this connection. The muzzler and the one who does the muzzling. So in other words, the person who is doing the work. V'nechsam l'chaysim. Ma chaysim oichel b'mechobrav. Nechtam oichel b'mechobrav. Ma nechsam oichel b'tolosh. Av chaysim oichel b'tolosh. So the idea is that we're going to connect them, and therefore you don't really need a pasuk to teach us this, because it's one can be learned out from the other. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's see, maybe another question. TA 14. What do we know from this pasuk? Either that chatzer's kavasa meiser, or only when you bring it through derech shar are you chayev, but not derech karfi voice. That was TA 14. Question TB. Let's see. 15. El gimel devar momanu bechilos poyel menachsiv dayish over Indian dumi the dayish. How do we learn from lo sasser shubadisha? What do we learn out from the poyel? So davar mechuber vo tolush, davar malacha, inyan chiyam ma'aser v'chala. I think this we'll see in tomorrow's daf. Adkan.